just an hour, not for just a day, not for just a year, but always. I'll be loving you always, with a love that's true always. When the things you plan need a helping hand, I will understand always, always. Days may not be fair always. That's when I'll be there always. Not for just an hour, not for just a day, not for just a year, but always.
That's right, Edith.
Yes, ma'am.
Madame Arcadi, Mrs. Bradman, and I will have our coffee in here after dinner, and Mr. Condamine and Dr. Bradman will have theirs in the dining room. Is that quite clear?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you're serving dinner, Edith, try to remember to do it calmly and methodically.
Yes, ma'am.
Now go and get the ice.
Yes, ma'am.
Not at a run, Edith.
Yes, ma'am.
No sign of the advancing hordes.
Not yet.
No ice.
It's coming. I'm trying to discourage Edith from being quite so fleet of foot. You mustn't mind if everything is a little slow motion tonight.
A dry martini, I think, don't you?
Yes, darling. I expect Madame Arcadi will want something sweeter.
We'll have this one for ourselves, anyhow.
Oh, dear.
Oh, what's the matter?
You must promise not to catch my eye. If I giggle, and I'm very likely to, it will ruin everything.
Oh, you mustn't. You must be dead serious, and if possible, a little intense. We can't hurt the old girl's feelings, however funny she is. To the Unseen.
I must say that's a wonderful title.
If this evening's a success, I will start on the first draft tomorrow.
Was Elvira a help to you? When you were thinking something out, I mean?
Every now and then, when she concentrated. She didn't concentrate very often.
Oh, I do wish I'd known her.
Poor Elvira.
I wonder if I died before you'd grown tired of me, if you'd forget me so soon.
Well, to begin with, I haven't forgotten Elvira. I remember her very distinctly indeed. I remember how fascinating she was, and how maddening. I remember how badly she played all games, and how cross she got when she didn't win. I remember her gay charm when she had achieved her own way over something, and her extreme acidity when she didn't. I remember her physical attractiveness, which was tremendous, and her spiritual integrity, which was nil.
You can't remember something that was nil, darling. Was she more physically attractive than I am?
That is a very tiresome question, dear, and fully deserves the wrong answer.
You really are very sweet.
Thank you.
And a little naive, too.
Why?
Because you imagine that I mind about Elvira being more physically attractive than I am.
I love you, my love. I hope I haven't been in any way a disappointment, dear.
You're awfully irritating when you're determined to be witty at all costs. Almost supercilious.
That's exactly what Elvira used to say.
Poor Elvira.
That remark is getting monotonous.
Poor Charles, then.
That's better.
And later on, poor Ruth, I expect.
You won't die. You're not the dying sort.
Neither was Elvira.
Oh, yes, she was. Now that I look back on it, she had a certain ethereal, not quite of this world quality. Nobody could call you even remotely ethereal.
Nonsense. She was of the earth, earthy.
Well, she is now, anyhow.
You know, that's the kind of observation that shocks people.
It's discouraging to think how many people are shocked by honesty and how few by deceit.
Write that down. You might forget it.
You underrate me.
Admirable. But if tragedy should darken our lives, I still say with prophetic foreboding, poor Ruth.
Well, that's probably the Bradmans.
It might be Madame Arcadi.
No, she'll come on her bicycle. She always goes everywhere on her bicycle.
It really is very spirited of the old girl.
Steady, Edith.
Yes, sir. Dr. and Mrs. Bradman.
Oh, we're not late, are we? I only just got back from the hospital about a half hour ago.
Of course not. Madame Arcadi isn't here yet.
That must have been her we passed on the hill. I said I thought it was.
Then she won't be long. I'm so glad you were able to come.
We've been looking forward to it. I'm really quite excited.
I guarantee that Violet will be good. I made her promise.
It's funny, isn't it? I mean, anybody doing it as a profession?
Well, I believe it's very lucrative.
But she must believe it herself, mustn't she? Or is the whole business a fake?
I suspect the worst. A real professional charlatan. That's what I'm hoping for, anyhow. The character I'm planning for my book must be a complete imposter. That's one of the most important factors of the whole story.
What exactly are you hoping to get from her?
Jargon, principally. A few of the tricks of the trade. I haven't been to a seance for years. Eh, Ruth? I want to refresh my memory.
Do you think she tells fortunes? I love having my fortune told.
I expect so.
I was told once at the pier at Asbury Park that I was surrounded by lilies and a golden seven. It worried me for days.
Yes, but we really must all be serious, you know, and pretend that we believe implicitly. Otherwise, she won't play.
Also, she really might mind. It would be cruel to upset her.
She'll be good as gold.
We originally met as colleagues at one of Mrs. Wilmot's literary evenings in Oyster Bay.
What sort of books does she write?
Two sorts. Rather whimsical children's stories about enchanted woods filled with highly conversational flora and fauna, and enthusiastic biographies of minor royalties. Very sentimental, reverent, and extremely funny.
Here she is.
Oh, she knows, doesn't she? About tonight. You're not going to spring it on her.
Oh, of course. It was arranged all last week. I told her how profoundly interested I was in anything to do with the occult, and she blossomed like a rose. You go and meet her, darling.
I've leaned my bike up against the little bush. It will be perfectly all right if no one meddles with it.
Madam Arcady.
How nice of you to come all this way.
My dear Madame Arcady.
I'm afraid I'm rather late, but I had a sudden premonition that... So I went back to fetch my pump. And then, of course, I didn't have a puncture at all.
Oh, perhaps you will on the way home.
Oh, Dr. Bradman, the man with the gentle hands.
I am so delighted to see you're looking so well. This is my wife.
We are old friends. We meet coming out of the shops.
Are you writing anything nowadays, Madame Arcady?
Every morning, regular as clockwork, 7 till 1.
Is it a novel or a memoir?
It's a children's book. I have to finish it by the end of October to catch the Christmas sales. It's mostly about very small animals. The hero is a moss beetle. I had to give up my memoir of Princess Pagliatani because she died in April. I talked to her about it the other day, and she implored me to go on with it, but I really hadn't the heart.
You talked to her the other day?
Through my control, of course. She sounded irritable.
It's funny to think of people in the spirit world as being irritable, isn't it? I mean, one can hardly imagine it, can one?
We have no reliable guarantee that the afterlife will be any less exasperating than this one, have we?
Oh, Mr. Condamine, how can you?
Dinner is served, ma'am.
Thank you, Edith. Shall we?
No red meat, I hope?
There's meat, but I don't think it'll be very red. Would you rather have an egg or something?
Oh, no, thank you. It's just that I make it a rule never to eat red meat before I work. It sometimes has an odd effect.
Oh, what sort of effect?
Oh, nothing of the least importance. If it isn't very red, it won't matter much. Anyhow, we'll risk it.
Come along then. Madame Arcady, you're on Charles's right.
She went right back to the Borgias, which I think accounted for a lot one way or another. Even as a child, she was given to the most violent, destructive tempers. Very inbred, you know.
Yes, she must have been.
Control was quite scared the other day when we were talking. I could hear it in her voice. After all, she's only a child.
And she still goes on being a child? I mean, she doesn't show any signs of growing older?
Time values on the other side are utterly different from ours.
Can you foretell the future?
Certainly not. I disapprove of fortune tellers most strongly.
Oh, really? Why?
Too much guesswork and fake mixed up with it. Even when the gift is genuine, and it only very occasionally is, you can't count on it.
Why not?
Time again. Time is the reef upon which all our frail mystic ships are wrecked.
How very wise. I want you to leave the dining room just as it is for tonight, Edith. You can clear the table in the morning.
Yes, ma'am.
And we don't want to be disturbed for the next hour or so for any reason whatsoever. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
I wish the men would hurry up. I'm terribly excited.
Please don't be. It makes everything much more difficult.
Well, Madame Arcady, the time is drawing near.
Who knows? It may be receding.
How very true. Is there anything you'd like us to do?
Do?
Yes, hold hands or anything?
All that will come later. First, take a few deep breaths of fresh air. You may talk if you wish. It will not disturb me in the least.
Oh, dear.
Excellent dinner, darling. I congratulate you.
That seagull is very angry.
I beg your pardon?
I said that seagull is very angry. Listen.
How can you tell?
Timbre. No moon, that's as well, I think. There's a mist rising from the marshes. There's no need for me to light my bicycle lamp, is there? I mean, nobody's likely to fall over it?
No, we're not expecting anybody else.
Good night, you foolish bird. Little Tommy Tucker sings for his supper. What shall he have but brown bread and butter? I despise that because it doesn't rhyme at all, but Daphne loves it.
Who's Daphne?
Daphne is Madame Arcadie's control. She's a little girl.
Oh, I see. Yes, of course.
How old is she?
Rising 7 when she died.
And when was that?
February the 6th, 1884.
Poor little thing.
Oh, she must be long in the tooth by now, I should think.
You should think, Dr. Bradman, but I fear you don't, at least not profoundly enough.
Do be quiet, George. You'll put Madame Arcadie off.
Please forgive me, Madame Arcadie. I assure you I am most deeply interested.
It is of no consequence. Will you all sit around the table, please, and place your hands downward on it?
What about the lights?
All in good time, Mr. Condamine. Sit down, please. That's right. I presume that is the gramophone, Mr. Condamine?
Yes. Would you like me to start it? It's an electric one.
Please stay where you are. I can manage. Now, let me see. What have we here? Brahms? Oh, dear me, no. Rachmaninoff. Too florid. Where is the dance music?
They're the loose ones on the left.
I see.
I'm afraid none of them is very new.
Daphne is really more attached to Irving Berlin than anybody else. She likes a tune she hum. Ah, here's one. Always.
Always?
Do sit down, Charles. What's the matter?
Nothing. Nothing at all.
The light switch is right here?
Yes.
Of course, I cannot guarantee that anything will happen. Daphne may be unavailable. She had a head cold very recently and was rather under the weather, poor child. On the other hand, a great many things might occur. One of you might have an emanation, for instance, or we might contact a poltergeist, which would be extremely destructive and noisy.
In what way destructive?
They throw things, you know.
I didn't know.
Fortunately, an elemental at this time of the year is most unlikely.
And what do elementals do?
Oh, my dear, one can never tell. Fully unpredictable. Usually they take the form of a very cold wind.
Oh, dear.
Occasionally reaching almost hurricane velocity.
I'm so glad.
Now then, are you ready to enter mines?
Oh, I'll do my damnedest.
Good work. I shall now start the music.
Oh, my.
Quiet, please. Is there anyone there? Is there anyone there? One rap for yes, 2 raps for no. Is there anyone there?
Oh!
Shh! Is that you, Daphne? Is your cold better, dear? Oh, I'm so sorry. Are you doing anything for it? I'm afraid she's rather fretful. Is there anyone there who wishes to anyone here? Ah, now we're getting somewhere. No, Daphne, don't do that, dear. You're hurting me. Daphne, dear, please. Oh, be good. There's a dear child. Oh, you say there is someone there who wishes to speak to someone here. Is it me? Is it Dr. Bradman? Is it Mrs. Bradman? Is it Mr. Condamine? it Mr. Condamine? There is someone here who wishes to speak to you, Mr. Condamine.
Tell him to leave a message.
I really must ask you not to be flippant, Mr. Condamine.
Charles, how can you be so idiotic? You'll spoil everything.
I'm sorry, it slipped out.
Do you know anybody who has passed over recently?
Not recently, except my cousin in the civil service, and he wouldn't be likely to want to communicate with me. We haven't spoken for years.
It might be old Mrs. Plummet. You know, she died Memorial Day.
I can't imagine why old Mrs. Plummet should wish to talk to me. We had very little in common.
It's worth trying anyhow.
Are you old Mrs. Plummet?
She was very deaf. Perhaps you'd better shout.
Are you old Mrs. Plummet? There's nobody there at all.
How disappointing, just as we were getting on so nicely.
Violet. Be quiet.
Well, I'm afraid there's nothing for it but for me to go into a trance. I'd hoped to avoid it because it's so exhausting. However, what must be, must be. Excuse me for a moment while I start the gramophone again.
Not always. Don't play it always.
Why ever not, Charles? Don't be absurd.
I'm afraid I must. It would be imprudent to change horses in midstream, if you know what I mean.
Oh, have it your own way.
Little Tommy Tucker sings for
Yeah, it
his
must be
summer
Daphne. Gotta have her owl noise out.
George, please.
Ah!
Good God!
Keep still, Charles. Press down hard. There now.
It's trying to get away. I can't hold it.
Leave it where it is.
Who said that?
Who said what?
Somebody said, leave it where it is.
Nonsense, dear.
I heard it distinctly.
Well, nobody else did they?
I never heard a sound.
It was you, Ruth. You're big tricks.
I'm not doing anything of the sort. I haven't uttered a word.
Good evening, Charles.
Ventriloquism, that's what it is. Ventriloquism.
What is the matter with you?
You must have heard that. One of you must have heard that.
Heard what?
You mean to sit there solemnly and tell me that none of you heard anything at all?
I certainly didn't.
Neither did I. I wish I had. I would love to hear something.
It's you who are playing tricks, Charles. You're acting to try to frighten us.
I'm not. I swear I'm not.
It's difficult to think of what to say after 7 years, but I suppose good evening is as good as anything.
Who are you?
Elvira, of course. Don't be silly.
I can't bear this for another minute.
Did you hear anything at all that we didn't hear, really?
Of course not. I was only pretending.
I know you were.
Oh, dear. Look at Madame Arcadi.
Ooh, she's out all right.
Wake up, Madame Arcadi. Wake up. It's time to go home.
Here, go easy, old man.
Wake up, Madame Arcadi. Little Tommy Tucker. Madame Arcadi! Wake up!
She's coming around.
Be careful, Charles.
Well, that's that.
Are you all right?
Certainly I am. Never felt better in my life. I probably won't sleep a wink tonight as it is.
No, I won't.
Why on earth not?
Well, the whole experience has unhinged me.
Well, what happened? Was it satisfactory?
Nothing much happened, Madame Arcadi, after you went off.
Something happened all right. I can feel it. No poltergeist at any rate. That's good. Any apparitions?
Not a thing.
No ectoplasm?
I'm not quite sure what it is, but I don't think so.
Very curious. I feel as though something tremendous had taken place.
Charles pretended he heard a voice in order to frighten us.
I do hope I haven't gone and released something. However, we are bound to find out within a day or two. If any manifestation should occur or you hear any unexpected noises, you might let me know at once.
Of course we will. We'll telephone immediately.
I think I really must be on my way now.
Wouldn't you like us to leave your bicycle here and let us drive you home?
I honestly do think you should, Madame Arcadi. After that trance and everything, you can't be feeling quite yourself.
Nonsense, my dear. I'm as fit as a fiddle. Always feel capital after a trance. Rejuvenates me. Good night, Mrs. Condamine.
It was awfully sweet of you to take so much trouble.
I'm so sorry so little occurred. It's that cold of Daphne's, I expect. You know what children are like when there have anything wrong with them. We must try again some other evening.
That would be lovely.
Good night, Mrs. Bradman.
It was thrilling. It really was. I felt the table absolutely shaking under my hands.
Good night, Doctor.
Congratulations, Madame Arcadi.
Good night, everyone. Next time we must really put our backs into it.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. She's raving mad, of course. Mad as a hatter.
Be careful, Mrs. Condamine. She might hear you. Do you
Oh,
really think she believes?
Of course not. The whole thing's a put-up job. I must say, though, she shoots more original lines than they generally do.
I do hope Mr. Condamine got all the atmosphere he wanted for his book.
he might have got a great deal more if he hadn't spoiled everything by showing off. I'm really very cross with him. Ooh, I suddenly felt a draft. There must be a window open somewhere.
No, they're shut.
Perhaps it was one of those whatchamacallits that Madame Arcadi was talking about.
Oh no, it couldn't be. She distinctly said it was the wrong time of year for elementals.
Well, the old girl's gone pedaling off down the drive at one hell of a speed. We had a bit of trouble lighting her lamp.
Poor dear.
I've got a theory about her, you know. I believe she's completely sincere.
Charles, how could she be?
Would it be possible, Doctor, some form of self-hypnosis?
It might be. As I was trying to explain to your wife, there are certain types of hysterical subjects.
George, dear, it's getting terribly late. We really must go home. You have to get up so early in the morning.
You see, the moment I begin to talk about anything that really interests me, my wife has to interrupt me.
You know I'm right, darling. It's past 11.
You must have a drink before you go.
No, really, thank you. Violet's quite right, I'm afraid. I have to get up abnormally early tomorrow. I have a patient being operated on in Hempstead.
It's been a thrilling evening. I shall never forget. It was sweet of you to include us.
Good night, Mrs. Condamine. Thank you so much.
We'll let you know if we find any poltergeists whirling about.
I'd never forgive you if you didn't.
Come along, darling.
Well, darling?
Well?
Yes, you seem odd somehow. Do you feel quite well?
Perfectly. I think I'll have a drink. Do you want one?
No, thank you, dear.
It's rather chilly in this room.
Come over by the fire.
I don't think I'll make any notes tonight. I'll start fresh in the morning. My God!
Charles!
That was very rude, Charles, dear.
Elvira! Then it's true. It was you.
Of course it was.
Charles, darling Charles, what are you talking about?
Are you a ghost?
I suppose I must be. It's all very confusing.
Charles, what do you keep looking over there for? Look at me. What's happened?
Don't you see?
See what?
Elvira!
Come and sit down, darling.
Yes, Elvira, dear, this is Ruth. Ruth, this is Elvira.
Do please come sit down, darling.
Do you mean you can't say you can't see her?
Listen, Charles, you just come sit down quietly by the fire. Don't worry about the mess on the carpet. Edith can clean it up in the morning.
But you must be able to see her. She's there. Look, right in front of you, there.
Are you mad? What's happened to you?
You can't see her.
If this is a joke, dear, it's gone quite far enough. Sit down, for God's sake, and don't be idiotic.
Well, what am I to do? What am I to do?
I think you might at least be a little more pleased to see me. After all, you conjured me up.
I didn't do any such thing.
Nonsense, of course you did. That awful child with the cold came and told me you wanted to see me urgently.
I've gone mad. That's what it is. I've gone raving mad.
Relax.
How can I relax? I'll never be able to relax again as long as I live.
Now sit down.
Why are you so anxious for me to sit down? What good will that do?
I want you to relax. You can't relax standing up.
African natives can. They can stand on one leg for hours.
I don't happen to be an African native.
You don't happen to be a what?
An African native!
What's that got to do with it?
Oh, it doesn't matter, Ruth. Really, it doesn't matter. We'll say no more about it. See, I've sat down.
Oh, get rid of her, Charles. Then we can talk in peace.
That's a thoroughly immoral suggestion. You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
What is immoral?
I wasn't talking to you.
Well, who are you talking to then?
Elvira, of course.
To hell with Elvira.
There now, she's getting cross.
Well, I don't blame her.
What don't you blame her for?
Oh, God.
Now look here, Charles. I gather you've got some sort of plan behind this. I'm not quite a fool. I suspected you when we were doing that idiotic seance.
Don't be so silly. What plan could I have?
I don't know. It's probably something to do with the characters in your book, how they, or one of them, would react to a certain situation. But I refuse to be used as a guinea pig unless I'm warned beforehand what it's all about.
Elvira is here, Ruth. She's sitting a few feet away from you.
Yes, dear, I can see her distinctly under the table with the zebra.
But Ruth!
I'm not going to stay here arguing any longer.
Hooray!
Shut up.
How dare you speak to me like that?
Listen, Ruth, please, listen.
I will not listen to any more of this nonsense. I'm going up to bed now. I will leave you to turn out the lights, and I won't be asleep. I'm too upset. So you can come in and say goodnight to me when you feel like it.
Oh, that's big of her, I must say.
Be quiet. You're behaving like a gutter snipe.
That is all I have to say. Good night, Charles.
Ruth!
That was one of the most enjoyable half hours I have ever spent.
Oh, Elvira, how could you?
Poor Ruth.
Where have you come from?
Do you know, it's very peculiar, but I've sort of forgotten.
Are you here indefinitely?
I don't know that either.
Oh, my God.
Why would you hate it so much if I was?
Well, you must admit it would be embarrassing.
I don't see why, really. It's all a question of adjusting yourself. Anyhow, I think it's horrid of you to be so unwelcoming and disagreeable.
Now look here, Elvira.
I do. I think you're mean.
Try to see my point, dear. I've been married to Ruth for 5 years, and you've been dead for 7.
I don't believe you love me anymore.
I shall always love the memory of you. Anyway, you must find out whether you're going to stay or not, and we could make some arrangements accordingly.
Oh, Charles.
What is it?
I want to cry, but I don't think I'm able to.
Well, what do you want to cry for?
It's seeing you again, and you being so irascible like you always used to be.
I don't mean to be irascible, Elvira.
Darling, I don't mind really. I never did.
Is it cold, being a ghost?
No, I don't think so.
What would happen if I touched you?
I doubt if you can. Do you want to?
Oh, Elvira.
What is it, darling?
I really do feel strange seeing you again.
Oh, that's better.
What's better?
Your voice was kinder.
Was I ever unkind to you when you were alive?
Often.
Oh, how can you? I'm sure that's an exaggeration.
I loved you very much.
I loved you too. No, I can't touch you. Isn't that horrible?
Perhaps it's as well if I'm going to stay for any length of time.
I suppose I shall wake up eventually, but I feel strangely peaceful now.
That's right. Just relax.
Okay.
Can you feel anything?
Only a very little breeze through my hair.
Well, that's better than nothing.
I suppose if I'm really out of my mind, they'll put me in an asylum.
Don't worry about that. Just relax.
Poor Ruth.
The hell with Ruth.
Good morning, darling.
Good morning, Charles.
It certainly is.
What certainly is what?
A good morning. A tremendously good morning. There isn't a cloud in the sky, and everything looks newly washed.
Is keeping your breakfast hot. You'd better ring.
I intend to work all day.
I'm sure I'm very glad to hear it.
You're very glacial this morning.
Are you surprised?
Frankly, yes. I expected more of you.
Well, really?
Good morning, Edith.
Good morning, sir.
Feeling fit?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
How's Cook?
I don't know, sir. I haven't asked her.
Greet her from me, will you?
Yes, sir.
That will be all for the moment, Edith.
Yes, ma'am.
I wish you wouldn't be facetious with the servants, Charles. It confuses them and undermines their morale.
I take back what I said about it being a good morning. It's a horrid morning.
You'd better eat your breakfast while it's hot.
It isn't.
You behaved abominably last night. You wounded and insulted me.
I was the victim of an aberration.
Nonsense. You were drunk.
Drunk? So that's your story, is it?
You refused to come to bed, and finally when I came down at 3 in the morning to see what had happened to you, I found you in an alcoholic coma on the sofa with the fire out and your hair all over your face.
I swear to you that during the seance, I was convinced that I heard Elvira's voice.
Well, nobody else did.
I can't help that. I did.
You couldn't have.
And later on, I was equally convinced that she was in this room. I saw her distinctly and talked to her. After you'd gone up to bed, we had quite a cozy little chat.
And you seriously expect me to believe you weren't drunk?
I know I wasn't drunk. If I'd been all that drunk, I should have had a dreadful hangover now, shouldn't I?
I'm not all that sure you haven't.
I haven't got a trace of a headache. My tongue's not coated. Look at it.
I have not the least desire to look at your tongue. Kindly put it in again.
I know what it is. You're frightened.
Frightened? Rubbish! What is there to be frightened of?
Elvira, you wouldn't have minded all that much, even if I had been drunk. It's only because it was all mixed up with Elvira.
I seem to remember last night before dinner telling you your views of female psychology were rather didactic. I was right. I should have added that they were puerile.
That was when it all began.
When what all began?
We were talking too much about Elvira. It's dangerous to have somebody very strongly in your mind when you start dabbling with the occult.
She certainly wasn't strongly on my mind.
She was in mine.
Oh, she was she?
You tried to make me say that she was more physically attractive than you so that you could hold it over me.
This is too much.
Women! My God, when I think of women.
Your view of women is academic to say the least. Just because you've always been dominated by them doesn't necessarily follow that you know anything about them.
I've never been dominated by anyone.
You were hag-ridden by your mother until you were 23. Then you got into the clutches of that awful Mrs. whatever her name was.
Mrs. Winthrop Llewellyn.
I'm not interested. Then there was Elvira. She ruled you with a rod of iron.
Elvira never ruled anyone. She was much too elusive. That was one of her greatest charms.
Then there was Maud Charteris.
The only woman in my whole life who's ever attempted to dominate me is you. You've been at it for years.
That is completely untrue.
Oh, no, it isn't. Boss me and bully me and order me around. You won't even allow me to have a hallucination if I want to.
Charles, alcohol will ruin your whole life if you allow it to get hold of you.
And what about you? You behaved with a stolid, obtuse lack of comprehension that frankly shocked me.
You seem to forget that you gratuitously insulted me.
I did not.
You called me a gutter snipe. You told me to shut up. And when I quietly suggested that we should go up to bed, you said with the most disgusting leer that it was an immoral suggestion.
I was talking to Elvira. What an attitude.
My attitude is that of any normal woman whose husband gets drunk and hurls abuse at her.
I was not drunk.
Be quiet. They'll hear you in the kitchen.
I don't care if they hear me in the Massapequa Town Hall. I was not drunk.
Control yourself, Charles.
Can I clear, please, ma'am?
Yes, Edith.
Cook wants to know about lunch, ma'am.
Will you be in to lunch, Charles?
Oh, please don't worry about me. I'll be perfectly happy with a bottle of gin in my bedroom.
Don't be silly, dear. Tell Cook we'll both be in.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to Stony Brook this morning. Is there anything you want?
Yes, a great deal. But I doubt if you could get it in Stony Brook.
Tell Cook to put Alka-Seltzer down on my list, will you, Edith?
Yes, ma'am.
I wasn't pretending. I really did believe that I saw Elvira, and when I heard her voice, I was appalled.
You've put up with it for 5 years.
And when I saw her, I had the shock of my life.
But you couldn't have seen her.
I know I couldn't have, but I did.
I'm willing to concede, then, that you imagined you did.
That's what I've been trying to explain to you.
Well, how do you feel now?
Physically, do you mean?
Altogether.
Apart from being worried, I feel quite normal.
You're not hearing or seeing anything unusual?
Not a thing.
You've absolutely ruined that border by the sundial. It looks like a mixed salad.
Oh my God!
What's the matter now?
She's here again.
What do you mean? Who's here again?
Elvira!
Pull yourself together and don't be absurd.
It's all those nasturtiums. They're so vulgar.
I like nasturtiums.
You like what?
They're all right in moderation, but in a mass like that, they look beastly.
Help me, Ruth! You've got to help me!
What did you mean about nasturtiums?
Never mind about that now. I tell you, she's here again.
You've been having a nice scene, haven't you? I could hear you all the way down in the garden.
Please, mind your own business.
If you're behaving like a lunatic isn't my business, nothing is.
I expect it was about me, wasn't it? I know I ought to feel sorry, but I'm not. I'm delighted.
How can you be so inconsiderate?
Inconsiderate? I like that, I must say.
Ruth, darling, please.
You're trying to upset me. For some obscure reason, you're trying to goad me into doing something I might regret. I won't stand for it anymore. You're making me utterly miserable.
Ruth, please.
No. Don't come near me.
Oh, let her have a nice cry. It'll do her good.
Elvira, you're utterly heartless.
Heartless?
I was not talking to you. I was talking to Elvira.
Well, go on talking to her then. Talk to her till you're blue in the face, but don't talk to me.
Help me, Elvira.
How?
Make her see you or something.
Oh, I'm afraid I couldn't manage that. It's technically the most difficult business. Frightfully complicated, you know. It takes years of study.
Charles?
Yes, dear?
I think I understand everything now. I do, really.
You do?
Of course I do.
Look out, she's up to something.
Will you please be quiet?
Of course, darling. We'll all be quiet, won't we? We'll be as quiet as little mice.
Ruth, dear, listen.
I want you to come upstairs with me and go to bed.
The way that woman hops on bed is nothing short of erotic.
I'll deal with you later.
Very well, darling. Come along.
What are you up to?
I'm not up to anything. I just want you to go quietly to bed and wait there until Dr. Bradman comes.
She'll have you in a straitjacket before you know where you are.
Help me! You must help me!
My dear, I would with pleasure, but I can't think how.
I can. Listen, Ruth.
Yes, dear?
Now, bear with me, however mad it may seem. Bear with me for just 5 minutes longer.
Very well. What is it?
Now, listen. Listen carefully.
Have a cigarette, darling. It'll soothe your nerves.
I don't want a cigarette.
Then you shouldn't have one, darling.
Ruth, I want to explain to you clearly and without emotion that beyond any shadow of a doubt, the ghost or shade or whatever you like to call it of my first wife, Elvira, is in this room now.
Yes, dear.
I know you don't believe it and are trying valiantly to humor me, but I intend to prove it to you.
Why not lie down and have a nice rest? You can prove anything you want to later on.
She may not be here later on.
Don't worry, she will.
Oh, God.
Hush, dear.
Promise you'll do what I ask.
That all depends on what it is.
Ruth, you see that bowl of flowers on the table?
Yes, dear, I did it myself this morning.
Very untidily, if I do say so.
You may not.
Very well. I never will again, I promise.
Elvira will now carry that bowl of flowers to the mantelpiece and back again. You will, Elvira, won't you? Just please me?
Oh, all right. I will just this once. Not that I approve of all these Penn and Teller carryings on.
Now, Ruth, watch carefully.
Very well, dear.
Go on, Elvira. Take her to the mantelpiece and back again.
Dum-da-dum-da-dum, da-dum-da-dum, da-dum-da-dum,
How
da-dum.
dare you, Charles? You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
What on earth for?
You want to get rid of me. You're trying to drive me out of my mind.
Don't be so silly.
You're cruel and sadistic. I'll never forgive you. I'm not going to put up with this anymore.
You must believe it. You must. That was Elvira. I swear it was.
Let me go. Charles, this is madness, sheer madness. It's some sort of autosuggestion, isn't it? Some form of hypnotism. Swear to me it's only that. Swear to me it's only that. Ah! I'm profoundly disturbed, Madame Arcadi, and I want your help.
Aha! I thought as much. What's in these sandwiches?
Cucumber,
Couldn't be better. Fire away.
it's most awfully difficult to explain.
There are more things in heaven and earth that are dreamt of in your philosophy, Mrs. Condamine.
There certainly are.
Come now, take the lunch. Out with it. You heard strange noises in the night, no doubt. Boards creaking, doors slamming, subdued moaning in the passages. Is that it?
I know it sounds idiotic, but the other night during the seance, something happened.
I knew it. Probably a poltergeist. They're enormously cunning, you know. They sometimes lie doggo for days.
You know that my husband was married before.
Yes, I've heard it mentioned.
His first wife, Elvira, died comparatively young.
Where?
Here, in this house, in this very room.
I'm beginning to see daylight.
She was convalescing after pneumonia, and one evening she started to laugh helplessly at one of WNYC's musical programs. She died of a heart attack.
And she materialized the other evening after I had gone?
Not to me, but to my husband.
Capital! Capital! Oh, but that's splendid!
Please sit down again, Madame Arcadi.
How could anyone sit down at a moment like this? It's tremendous! I haven't had such a success since the Sudbury case!
Nevertheless, I must insist upon you sitting down and controlling your natural exuberance. I appreciate fully your pride in your achievement, but I'd like to point out that this has made my position in this house untenable, and I hold you entirely responsible.
Please forgive me, Mrs. Condamine. I'm abominably selfish. How can I help you?
How? By sending her back immediately to where she came from, of course.
I'm afraid that is easier said than done.
But my dear Madame Arcadi...
Forgive the formality, but I shall have to make a report to the psychical research people.
I would be very much obliged if there were no names mentioned.
I quite understand. You say she is visible only to your husband?
Yes.
Visible only to husband. Audible too, I presume?
Extremely audible.
Extremely audible. Your husband was devoted to her?
I believe so.
Husband devoted. When did she pass over?
7 years ago.
She must have got herself marked down for a return visit, and she'd never have been able to manage it unless there were a strong influence at work.
Do you mean that Charles, my husband, wanted her back all that much?
Possibly, or it might have been her own determination.
That sounds much more likely.
Would you say that she was a woman of strong character?
I really don't know, Madame Arcadi. I never met her, nor am I particularly interested in how or why she got here. I'm only concerned with the question of how to get her away again as soon as possible.
The time has come for me to admit to you frankly, Mrs. Condamine, that I haven't the faintest idea how to set about it.
Do you mean to sit there and tell me that having mischievously conjured up this ghost or spirit or whatever she is and placed me in this hideous position, you are unable to do anything at all about it?
Honesty is the best policy.
But it's outrageous. I ought to hand you over to the police.
You go too far, Mrs. Condamine.
I go too far indeed. Do you realize what your insane amateur meddling has done?
I have been a professional since I was a child, Mrs. Condamine. Amateur is a word I cannot tolerate.
It seems to me the highest height of amateurishness to evoke malignant spirits and not be able to get rid of them again.
I was in a trance. Anything might happen when I am in a trance.
Well, you'll have to do something.
Try and look on the bright side.
Bright side indeed. If your husband's first wife suddenly appeared from the grave and came to live in the house with you, what do you suppose you'd be able to do? Look at the bright side?
Kindly remember that I came here the other night on your own invitation.
On my husband's invitation.
I did what I was requested to do, which was to give a seance and establish contact with the other side. I had no idea that there was any ulterior motive mixed up with it.
Ulterior motive?
Your husband was obviously eager to get in touch with his former wife. If I had been aware of that at the time, I should naturally have consulted you beforehand. After all, noblesse oblige.
He had no intention of trying to get in touch with anyone. The whole thing was planned in order for him to get material for a mystery story he's writing about a homicidal medium.
Am I to understand that I was only invited in a spirit of mockery?
Not at all. He merely wanted to make notes of some tricks of the trade.
Tricks of the trade? Insufferable! I have never been so insulted in my life. I feel we have nothing more to say to one another, Mrs. Condamine. Goodbye.
Please don't go. Please.
Your attitude from the outside has been most unpleasant, Mrs. Condamine. Some of your remarks have been discourteous in the extreme, and I should like to say, without umbrage, that if you and your husband were foolish enough to tamper with the unseen for paltry motives and in the spirit of ribaldry, whatever has happened to you is your own fault, and, to coin a phrase, as far as I'm concerned, you can stew in your own juice.
Damn, damn, damn.
What on earth was Madame Arcadi doing here?
She came to tea.
Well, what was the old girl so cross about? She practically ran me over.
I told her the truth about why we invited her the other night.
Well, why did you ask her to tea?
To get me exorcised, of course. Oh, dear. I wish I could have a cucumber sandwich. I did love them so.
Is that true, Ruth?
Is what true?
What Elvira said.
You know perfectly well I can't hear what Elvira says.
She said that you got Madame Arcadi here to try to get her exorcised. Is that true?
We discussed the possibilities.
There's a snake in the grass for you.
You had no right to do such a thing without consulting me.
I have every right. This situation is absolutely impossible, and you know it.
She's certainly very bad-tempered, isn't she? I can't imagine why you married her.
Well, she's naturally a bit upset. We must make allowances.
I was never bad-tempered, though, was I, darling? Not even when you were beastly to me.
I was never beastly to you.
Where is Elvira at the moment?
Over by the sofa.
Now look here, Elvira. I'll have to call you Elvira, won't I? I can't very well go on saying Mrs. Condamine all the time. It would sound too silly.
I don't see why.
Did she say anything?
She said she'd like nothing better.
Oh, I do absolutely worship you, Charles.
I wish to be absolutely honest with you, Elvira.
Hold on to your hats, boys.
I admit I did ask Madame Arcadi here with a view to getting you exercise, and I think that if you were in my position, you'd have done exactly the same thing, wouldn't you?
I shouldn't have done it so obviously.
What did she say?
Nothing. She just nodded and smiled.
Thank you, Elvira. That's generous of you. I really would so much rather there were no misunderstandings between us.
That's very sensible, Ruth. I agree entirely.
I want, before we go any further, to ask you a frank question. Why did you really come here? I don't see that you could have hoped to have achieved anything by it, beyond the immediate joke of making Charles into a sort of astral bigamist.
I came because the power of Charles's love tugged and tugged and tugged at me. Didn't it, my sweet?
What did she say?
She said she came because she wanted to see me again.
Well, she's done that now, hasn't she?
Didn't the old spiritualist have any constructive ideas about getting rid of me?
What did Madame Arcadi say?
She said she couldn't do a thing.
Hooray!
Oh, don't be upset, Ruth, dear. We shall soon adjust ourselves, you know. You must admit, it's a unique experience. I can see no valid reason why we shouldn't get a great deal of fun out of it.
Fun? Charles, how can you? You must be out of your mind.
Not at all. I thought I was at first, but now I must say I'm beginning to enjoy myself.
Oh, Charles! Charles! No!
She's off again.
You really must not be so callous, Elvira. Try to see her point a little.
I suppose she said something insulting.
No, dear, she didn't do anything of the sort.
Now look here, Elvira.
She's over by the window now.
Why the hell can't she stay in the same place?
Temper again. My poor Charles, what a terrible life you must lead.
Do shut up, darling. You only make everything worse.
Who is that darling addressed to, her or me?
Both of you.
Now, I've been doing my level best to control myself since yesterday morning, and I'm damned if I'm going to try to do it any more. The strain is too much. She has the advantage of being able to say whatever she pleases without me being able to hear her. But she can hear me all right, can't she, without any modified interpreting?
Modified interpreting? I don't know what you mean.
Oh, yes, you do. You haven't told me once what she really said. You wouldn't dare. Judging from her photograph, she's the type who would use the most unpleasant language.
Ruth, you're not to talk like that.
I've been making polite conversation all through dinner last night and breakfast and lunch today, and it's been a nightmare, and I'm not going to do it anymore. I don't like Elvira any more than she likes me, and what's more, I'm certain I never could have, dead or alive. If, since her untimely arrival here the other evening, she had shown the slightest sign of good manners, or the slightest sign of breeding, I might have felt differently towards her. But all she's done is make mischief between us and have private jokes with you against me. I'm now going up to my room, and I shall have my dinner on a tray. You and she can have the house to yourselves and joke and gossip with each other to your heart's content. But the first thing in the morning, I'm going to New York to interview the Psychical Research Society, and if they fail me, I shall go straight to Cardinal Spellman.
Ruth!
Do you love her?
Of course I do.
As much as you loved me?
Don't be silly. It's all entirely different.
I'm so glad. Nothing could ever have been quite the same, could it?
I'm grieved to see that your sojourn in the other world hasn't improved you in the least.
Go on, darling. I love it when you pretend to be cross with me.
What do you want, Elvira?
Want? I don't know what you mean.
I remember that whenever you were overpoweringly demure, it usually meant that you wanted something.
It's horrid of you to be so suspicious. All I want is to be with you.
Well, you are.
I mean alone, darling. If you go and pamper Ruth and smom all over her, she'll probably come flouncing down again, and our lovely, quiet evening will be spoiled.
You're incorrigibly selfish.
Well, I haven't seen you for 7 years. It's only natural that I should want a little time alone with you to talk over old times. I'll let you go up just for a little while if you really think it's your duty.
Of course it is.
Then I don't mind.
You're disgraceful, Elvira.
You won't be long, will you? You'll come down again very soon.
I shall probably dress for dinner while I'm upstairs. You can read Vogue or something.
Darling, you don't have to dress for me.
I always dress for dinner.
What are you going to have? I should like to watch you eat something really delicious.
Well, be a good girl now. You can play the gramophone if you like.
Thank you, Charles.
Be loving you always. That's when I'll be there.
Does it show any signs of clearing?
No, it's still pouring.
Don't worry about your husband's arm, Mrs. Condamine. I'm sure it's only a sprain.
It's not his arm I'm worried about.
And I'm sure Edith will be up and about again in a few days.
My cook gave notice this morning.
Well, really, servants are awful, aren't they? Not a shred of gratitude. At the first signs of trouble, they run out on you like rats leaving a sinking ship.
Nothing to worry about, Mrs. Condamine. It's only a slight sprain.
I'm so relieved.
Oh, but he made a great deal of fuss about it when I examined it. Men are much worse patients than women. You know, particularly high-strung men like your husband.
Is he so highly strung, do you think?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I want to talk to you about that. I'm afraid he's been overworking lately.
Overworking?
He's in a rather nervous condition. Nothing serious, you understand.
What makes you think so?
Oh, I know the symptoms. Of course, the shock of his fall might have something to do with it, but I certainly would advise a complete rest for a couple weeks.
What symptoms did you notice?
Oh, nothing to be unduly alarmed about. Oh, a certain strain, an inability to focus his eyes on the person he's talking to, and a few rather marked irrelevancies in his conversation.
I see. Can you remember any specific examples?
Oh, he suddenly shouted, oh, what are you doing in the bathroom? And then a little later, while I was writing him a prescription, he suddenly said, for God's sakes, behave yourself.
How extraordinary.
He often goes on like that, particularly when he's immersed in writing a book.
Oh, I'm not in the least bit perturbed about it, really. But I think rest and a change would be a good idea.
And how is poor Edith?
She'll be all right in a few days. She's still recovering from the concussion.
It's funny, isn't it? That both your husband and your housemate should fall down on the same day, isn't it?
Yes, if that sort of thing amuses you.
Uh, of course, I didn't mean anything like that, Mrs. Condamine.
Oh, come along, my dear. You are talking way too much as usual.
You are horrid, George. Goodbye, Mrs. Condamine.
Goodbye.
Well, how does it feel?
All right.
It's only a slight sprain, you know.
I had intended to drive into Massapequa this evening.
It would be much better if you didn't.
It's extremely inconvenient.
You can easily wait and go tomorrow, Charles.
I can't stand another of those dreary evenings at home, Charles. It'll drive me nuts. And I haven't seen a movie in 7 years.
Let me be the first to congratulate you.
What's that, old man?
Charles, dear, try to be sensible, I implore you.
Sorry, I forgot.
Well, you can drive the car if you promise to go very slowly and carefully. Your gear shift is on the right, isn't it?
Yes.
You do much better to stay at home.
Couldn't you drive him in?
I'm afraid not. I have lots to do at the house, and there's Edith to be attended to.
Well, I'll leave to fight it out amongst yourselves. But remember, if you do insist on going, carefully does it. The roads are very slippery anyhow. Come along, Violet.
Goodbye again. Goodbye, Mr. Condamine.
Goodbye.
You really are infuriating, Elvira. Surely you could wait and go to the movies another night.
What?
I was talking to Elvira.
She isn't here.
You're sure she isn't here?
Quite sure.
I want to talk to you.
Oh, God.
I must. It's important.
You've behaved very well for the past few days, Ruth. You're not going to start making scenes again, are you? Poor Elvira.
Well, what did she expect?
Surely even an ectoplasmic manifestation has the right to expect a little of the milk of human kindness.
Milk of human fiddlesticks. Elvira's about as trusting as a puff adder.
You're granite, Ruth. Sheer, unyielding granite.
And a good deal more dangerous into the bargain.
Dangerous? I never heard anything so ridiculous. How could a poor, lonely, wistful little spirit like Elvira be dangerous?
This is a fight, Charles. A bloody battle. A duel to the death between Elvira and me. Don't you realize that?
Melodramatic hysteria.
I am making every effort not to lose my temper with you, Charles, but I must say you're making it increasingly difficult for me.
All this talk of battles and duels.
She came here with one purpose and one purpose only, and if you can't see that, you're a bigger fool than I thought you were.
What purpose could she have had beyond a natural desire to see me again? After all, you must remember that she was extremely attached to me, poor child.
Her purpose is perfectly obvious. It's to get you to herself forever.
That's absurd. How could she?
By killing you off, of course.
Killing me off? You're mad.
Why do you suppose Edith fell down the stairs and nearly cracked her skull?
What's Edith got to do with it?
Because the whole top stair was covered in axle grease. Cook discovered it afterwards.
You're making this up, Ruth.
If you were dead, it would be her final triumph over me. She'd have you with her forever on her damned astral plane, and I'd be left high and dry. She's probably planning some sort of spiritual remarriage. I wouldn't put anything past her.
I grant you that as a character she was always rather light and irresponsible. but I would never have believed her capable of low cunning.
For heaven's sake, stop looking like a wounded spaniel and concentrate. This is serious.
Well, what are we to do?
You're not to let her know we suspect anything. Behave perfectly ordinarily, as though nothing had happened. I'm going to Madame Arcadi immediately. I don't care how cross she is. She's got to help us. Even if we can't get rid of Elvira, she must have some technical method of rendering her harmless. If a trance is necessary, she shall go into a trance if I have to beat her into it. I'll be back in half an hour. Tell Elvira I've gone to see the Reverend.
Look out!
What?
I merely said, it's a nice look out.
What's a nice lookout?
The weather, Elvira. The barometer is going down and down and down. It's positively macabre.
I find it difficult to believe that you and Ruth, at this particular moment, can't think of anything more interesting to talk about than the weather.
I can't stand this anymore. I really can't.
Ruth, dear, please.
Oh, has she broken out again?
What did she say?
She asked if you had broken out again.
Charles and I were not talking about the weather, Elvira, as you so shrewdly suspected. I should loathe you to think we had any secrets from you. And so I shall explain exactly what we were talking about. I was trying to persuade him not to drive you into Massapequa this evening. It'll be bad for his arm, and you can perfectly easily wait until tomorrow. However, as he seems to be determined to place your wishes above mine in everything, I have nothing further to say. I'm sure I hope you both enjoy yourselves.
She is a woman of sterling character. It's a pity she's so ungiving.
As I told you before, I'd rather not discuss Ruth with you. It makes me uncomfortable.
I won't mention her again. Are you ready?
What for?
To go to Massapequa, of course.
I want a glass of sherry first.
I don't believe you want to take me at all.
Of course I want to take you, but I still think it would be more sensible to wait until tomorrow. It's a rotten night.
How familiar this is.
In what way familiar?
All through our married life, I had only to suggest something for you immediately to start being evasive.
I'm not being evasive. I merely said...
All right. We'll spend another cozy, intimate evening at home with Ruth sewing away at that hideous centerpiece and snapping at us like a terrier.
Well, the car won't be back for half an hour at least.
What do you mean?
Ruth's taken it. She had to go and see the Reverend.
What?
What on earth's the matter?
You say Ruth's taken the car?
Yes, to go and see the Reverend, but she won't be long.
Oh, my God.
Elvira!
Stop her. You've got to stop her at once.
Why? What for?
Stop her. Go out and stop her immediately.
It's too late now. I heard her go a couple of minutes ago.
Oh!
What are you going on like this for? What have you done?
Done? I haven't done anything.
My God! The car!
No, Charles, no!
Ruth was right! You did want to kill me! You've done something to the car!
Oh!
What did you do? Answer me! Hello? Hello? Yes, speaking. I see. The bridge at the bottom of the hill. Thank you. No, I'll come at once.
Ruth. Well, of all the filthy, low-down tricks. Ow! Oh, stop it! Ruth! Ruth, let me go!
tremendous urge, like a rushing wind, and so I hopped on my bike and here I am.
It was very kind of you.
No, not kind at all. It was my duty. I know it strongly.
Duty?
I allowed myself to get into a huff the other day with your late wife. I rode all the way home in the grip of temper, Mr. Condamine. I have regretted it ever since.
You told my wife distinctly that you were unable to help her. You were perfectly honest. Over and above the original unfortunate mistake, I see no reason for you to reproach yourself.
I threw in the towel. In a moment of crisis, I threw in the towel instead of throwing down the gauntlet.
Well, whatever you threw, Madame Marcotte, I very much fear nothing could have been done. It seems that circumstances have been a little too strong for all of us.
I cannot bring myself to admit defeat so easily. It is gall and wormwood to me. I could have at least concentrated, made an effort.
Well, never mind.
I do mind. I cannot help it. I mind with every fiber of my being. I have been thinking very carefully. I have also been reading up a good deal during the last few dreadful days. I gather that we are alone?
Well, my first wife is not in the room. She's upstairs lying down. The funeral exhausted her. I imagine that my second wife is with her, but of course I have no way of knowing for certain.
It came to me last night, Mr. Condamine. It came to me in a blinding flash. I had just finished my Ovaltine and turned out the light when I suddenly started up in bed with a loud cry. "Great Scott!" I said. "I've got it!" After that, I began to put two and two together. At 3 in the morning, with my brain fairly seething, I went to work on my crystal for a little bit, but it wasn't very satisfactory. Cloudy, you know.
Oh, I'm afraid there's nothing to be done.
But there is. I have found a formula. Here it is. I copied it out of Edmondson's Witchcraft and its Byway.
Charles?
What on earth's the matter?
Oh, what's she doing here?
Madame Marcotte, allow me to introduce my first wife, Elvira.
How do you do?
What does she want, Charles? Send her away.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I smell ectoplasm strongly.
What a disgusting thing to say.
Where is she now?
Here, close to me.
Are you happy, my dear?
Tell the silly old bitch to mind her own business.
Just a moment, Madame Marcotte.
This is wonderful. Wonderful.
For God's sakes, tell her to go to the other room, Charles. I've got to talk to you.
Madame Marcotte?
Just a moment. I almost have contact. I can sense the vibration. This is magnificent.
Oh, go on, Elvira. Don't be a spoilsport. Give her a bit of encouragement.
If you'll promise to get her to go to the other room.
All right.
Oh, yes. Oh, again.
How's that?
This is first rate. It really is first rate. Absolutely stunning.
I'm so glad you're pleased.
Please get rid of her. Ruth will be in a minute.
Madame Marcotte, would you think it most frightfully rude if I asked you to go into the dining room for a moment? My first wife wishes to speak to me alone.
Oh, you darling. You little darling.
The whole thing's been a failure. A miserable, dreary failure. And oh, I had such high hopes to start with.
Well, you can't expect much sympathy from me, you know. I am perfectly aware that your highest hope was to murder me.
Oh, Charles!
Stop crying.
They're only ghost tears. They don't mean anything really, but they're very painful.
You've brought all this on yourself, you know.
I sat there on the other side, just longing for you day after day. I did really. All through your affair with that brassy-looking woman in the south of France, I went on loving you and thinking truly of you. And then you married Ruth, and even then I forgave you and tried to understand, because all the time I believed deep inside that you really loved me best. And that's why I put myself down for a return visit and had to fill in all those dreadful forms and wait about in drafty passages for hours. If only you'd died before you'd met Ruth, everything might have been all right. She's absolutely ruined you. I hadn't been in the house a day before I realized that. Your books aren't a quarter as good as they used to be either.
Well, all you ever thought about was going to parties and enjoying yourself.
Why shouldn't I have fun? I died young, didn't I?
You needn't have died at all if you hadn't been idiotic enough to go out on the river with Guy Henderson and get soaked to the skin.
So, we're back to Guy Henderson again, are we?
Did you have an affair with Guy Henderson?
I would rather not discuss it if you don't mind.
Answer me. Did you or didn't you?
Of course I didn't.
You let him kiss you, though, didn't you?
How could I stop him? He was bigger than I.
And you swore to me...
You never loved me a bit, really. It was only your beastly vanity.
You seriously believe that it was only vanity that upset me when you went out on the rowboat with Guy Henderson?
It was not a rowboat. It was a little launch.
I don't care if it was a three-masted schooner. You had no right to go.
You seem to forget why I went. You seem to forget that you had spent the entire evening making sheep's eyes at that overgrown harridan with the false pearls.
A woman in Cynthia Cheviot's position would hardly wear false pearls.
They were practically all she was wearing.
There is nothing to be gained by continuing this discussion.
You always used to say that when you were thoroughly worsted.
Once and for all, Elvira.
You never suspected it, but I laughed at you steadily from the altar to the grave. All your ridiculous petty jealousies, all your fussings and fumings.
You were feckless and irresponsible and morally unstable. I realized that before we left Myrtle Beach.
Nobody but a monumental bore would have thought of having a honeymoon at Myrtle Beach.
What's the matter with Myrtle Beach?
I was an eager young bride, Charles. I wanted glamour and music and romance. And all I got was potted palms, 7 hours every day on a damp golf course, and a three-piece orchestra playing the Tennessee Waltz.
Well, it's a pity you didn't tell me so at the time.
I did, but you wouldn't listen. That's why I went out on the beach that day with Captain Bracegirdle. I was desperate.
You swore to me that you'd gone over to see your aunt in Charleston.
It was the beach.
With Captain Bracegirdle?
With Captain Bracegirdle.
I might have known it. What a fool I was. What a blind fool. Did he make love to you?
Only very discreetly. He was in the cavalry, you know.
Well, all I can say is that I'm well rid of you.
Unfortunately, you're not.
Oh, yes, I am. You're dead and Ruth's dead. I shall sell this house, lock, stock, and barrel, and go away.
I shall follow you.
I shall go a long way away. I shall go to South America. You'll hate that. You were always a bad traveler.
That can't be helped. I shall have to follow you. You called me back.
I did not call you back.
Ah! Call her in. She's got to get me out of this.
I quite agree. And the sooner the better. Madame Arcadi, would you please come in now?
Is the darling still here?
Yes, she is.
Where? Tell me where.
Over by the hearth, blowing her nose.
My dear. Oh, my dear.
Stop her fawning on me, Charles, or I shall break something.
Elvira and I have discussed the whole situation, Madame Arcadi, and she wishes to go home immediately.
I can't guarantee anything, you know. I'll do my best, but it may not work.
Merlin does all this sort of thing at parties and bores us all stiff with it.
Now then, the gramophone. In the old days, of course, they used a zither or reed pipes. We'd better have the same record we had before, I think.
I'm as eager for it to succeed as you are. Don't make any mistake about that. but I'll lay you 10-1 it's a dead failure.
Now, if your wife would be kind enough to lie down.
Go on, Elvira.
This is sheer nonsense. Don't blame me if I get the giggles.
Concentrate. Think of nothing.
That's right, quite right. Hands at the sides, legs extended. Breathe steadily. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Is she comfortable?
Are you comfortable, Elvira?
No.
She's quite comfortable.
I shall join you in a moment, Mr. Condamine. I may have to go into a slight trance, but if I do, pay no attention. Now, first the music, and away we go.
Shoo!
Oh dear, it's the pepper.
Damn!
Ghostly spectre, ghoul or fiend, nevermore be thou convened. Shepherd's wort and holy rite, banish thee into the night.
What a disagreeable little verse.
Be quiet, Elvira.
Shh! Is there anyone there? Is there anyone there? 1 rap for yes, 2 raps for no. Is there anyone there? Aha! Good stuff. Is that you, Daphne? I'm sorry to bother you, dear, but Mrs. Condamine wants to return. Now then, Daphne, did you hear what I said? Can you help us? Hold tight, Mrs. Condamine.
What's the matter, Madame Arcadi? Are you hurt?
She's in one of her damn trances again. And I'm here as much as I ever was. If I ever do get back, I'll strangle that bloody little Daphne.
What happened?
Nothing. Nothing at all.
Oh, yes, it did. I know something happened.
You fell over. That's all that happened.
Is she still here?
Of course she is.
Something happened. I sensed it in my trance. I felt it. It shivered through me.
Once and for all, Charles, what the hell does this mean? Well, we've done all we can. I must say I couldn't be more exhausted.
It'll be daylight soon.
That clock has always irritated me. It strikes far too slowly.
It was a wedding present from Uncle Walter.
Who's Uncle Walter?
Elvira's.
Now listen to me, Elvira. If you and I have got to stay here indefinitely in this house and it looks unpleasantly likely, we'd better come to some sort of arrangement.
What sort of arrangement?
You're not going to stay indefinitely in this house.
With you, then. We shall have to stay with you.
I don't see why. Why don't you take a cottage somewhere?
You called us back.
I've already explained until I'm blue in the face that I did nothing of the sort.
We have all agreed that as Elvira and I are dead, it would be both right and proper for us to dematerialize again as soon as possible. That I admit. We've allowed ourselves to be subjected to the most humiliating hocus pocus for hours and hours without complaining.
Without complaining?
We've stood up, we've lain down, we've concentrated, we've sat interminably while that tiresome old woman recited extremely unflattering verses at us. We've endured 5 seances. We've watched her fling herself in and out of trances until we're dizzy. And at the end of it, we find ourselves exactly where we were at the beginning.
Well, why don't you do something about it? Why don't you go back on your own?
We can't. You know perfectly well we can't.
Well, isn't there anybody on the other side who can help?
How do I know? I've only been here a few days. Ask Elvira.
I've already told you that's no good. If we got Cagliostro, Mesmer, Merlin, Gilderance, and the Black Douglas all in a row, they couldn't do a thing. The impetus has got to come from here. Perhaps darling Charles doesn't want us to go quite enough.
I certainly do.
Well, you must have a very weak will then. I always suspected it.
What time is it?
5:10.
What time did I go off?
Over an hour ago.
Curious, very curious. Forgive me for a moment. I must just make a note of that for my diary. Are they still here?
Yes.
How disappointing.
Have you any suggestions?
We mustn't give up hope. Chin up, never give up. That's my motto.
This schoolgirl phraseology's driving me mad.
Now then,
Oh, for God's sakes, not another seance?
I might be able to materialize a trumpet if I tried hard enough. Better than nothing, you know. I feel as fit as a fiddle after my rest.
I don't care if she materializes a whole symphony orchestra. I implore you not to let her have another seance.
Now listen, Madame Arcadi. Before you go off into any further trances, I really think we ought to discuss the situation a little.
Are the girls getting despondent?
I'm afraid they are, rather.
Now then, Mr. Condamine, the discussion. Fire away.
Well, my wives and I have been talking it over, and they're both absolutely convinced that I somehow or other called them back.
Very natural.
I am equally convinced that I did not.
You may not know your own strength, Mr. Condamine.
I did not call them back, either consciously or subconsciously.
Neither of them could have appeared unless there had been somebody, a psychic subject, in the house who wished for them.
Well, it wasn't me.
Great Scott! I believe I've been barking up the wrong tree.
How do you mean?
The Sudbury case.
I don't understand.
Oh, there's no reason why you should. It was before your day. I wonder.
What did you do?
I dematerialized old Lady Sudbury after she'd been firmly entrenched in the private chapel for over 17 years.
How? Can you remember how?
Wait, all in good time. Now, let me see. Who was in the house during our first sale?
Only the Bradmans, Ruth and me, and yourself.
Ah, yes, to be sure. But the Bradmans weren't here last night, were they?
No.
Be you in nook or cranny, answer me. Be you in still room or closet, answer me. Be you behind the panel, above the stairs, beneath the eaves, waking or sleeping, answer me. That ought to do it, or I'm a Dutchman.
Do what?
Hush! Wait.
Did you ring, sir?
No, Edith.
I'm sorry, sir. I could have sworn I heard the bell or something calling. I was asleep. I don't rightfully know which it was.
Come here, child.
Oh!
Go on. Go to Madame Arcadi. It's quite all right.
Who do you see in this room, child?
You, madame.
Go on.
The master.
Anyone else?
Oh, no, madame.
Look again.
I don't understand, sir.
Come, child. Don't beat around the bush. Look again.
Do Concentrate, Elvira, and keep still.
I can't.
Do you see anyone else now?
Oh, no, madame.
She's lying.
Oh, madame.
Where are they now?
By the fireplace. Oh,
She could see them. You mean she could see them?
Probably not very clearly, but enough.
let me go. I haven't done nothing nor seen nobody. Let me go back to bed. Please, sir,
Please do as Madame Arcadi says, Edith.
I haven't done anything wrong.
It's all right. Nobody said you had.
If she's been the cause of all this unpleasantness, I'll give her a week's notice tomorrow.
We may not be here tomorrow.
Look at me, Edith. Here, Edith. Listen to the clock. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Backwards and forwards it goes. See? Very quietly, backwards and forwards. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock.
The mouse ran up the clock.
Be quiet. You'll ruin everything.
Well, so far so good. She's off, all right.
Off?
She's a natural, just the same as the Sudbury case. It really is the most amusing coincidence. Now then, would you ask your wives to stand close together, please?
Where?
Over there, by the window.
Elvira? Ruth?
I resent being ordered about like this.
I don't like this at all. I don't like any of it. I feel peculiar.
I'm afraid I must insist.
It would serve you right if we flatly refused to do anything at all.
Are you sorry for having been so mischievous, Edith?
Oh, yes, madame.
You know what you have to do now, don't you, Edith?
Oh, yes, madame.
I believe it's going to work, whatever it is. Oh, Charles. This is goodbye, Charles.
Tell her to stop for a minute. There's something I need to say before I go.
You should have thought of that before. It's too late now.
Oh, of all the mean, ungracious.
Charles, listen a moment.
Lights!
Charles,
Don't
I
think
saw
you're
Captain
going to
Brace
get rid of us
again,
quite so
Charles.
easily, my
Several
dear.
times.
You may not be
I
able
went
to
to
see us, but
400
we shall
with
be
them
your
twice when you were
I
in Buffalo.
considered you
And I
behaving
said,
treacherously over
I
the whole
couldn't
miserable
have enjoyed
business.
it more. I think
Splendid! Hurrah! We've done it! That's quite enough humming for now, Edith.
They're gone! They're really gone!
Yes, I think we really blew it off this time.
You'd better wake her up, don't you think? She might bring them back again.
Wake up, child.
Good heavens, where am I?
It's all right, Edith. You can go back to bed now.
Why? It's morning.
Yes, I know it is.
But I was in my bed. How did I get down here?
I rang, Edith. I rang the bell and you answered it, didn't I, Madame Arcadi?
Did I drop off? Do you think it's my concussion again? Oh dear.
Off you go, Edith, and thank you very much.
Oh, sir, whatever for? Oh, sir!
Golly, what a night. I'm ready to drop my tracks.
Perhaps you'd give me the pleasure of lunching with me one day soon.
When you come back, I should be delighted.
Come back?
Take my advice, Mr. Condamine, and go away immediately.
But, Madame Arcadi, you don't mean...
There are more things in heaven and earth, Mr. Condamine. Just go pack your traps and go as soon as possible.
Do you mean they may still be here?
Quien sabe, as the Spanish say.
I wonder. I'll follow your advice, Madame Arcadi. Thank you again.
Well, goodbye, Mr. Condamine. It's been fascinating. From first to last, fascinating. Oh, don't trouble. I can find my way. Ciao once more, and good hunting.
Ruth? Elvira? Are you there? Ruth! Elvira! I know damn well you're there. I just want to tell you that I'm going away, so there's no point in your hanging around any longer. I'm going a long way away, somewhere where I don't believe you'll be able to follow me. In spite of what Elvira said, I don't think spirits can travel over water. Is that quite clear, my darlings? You said in one of your more acid moments, Ruth, that I had been hag-ridden all my life. How right you were! But now I'm free, Ruth dear, not only of Mother and Elvira and Mrs. Winthrop Llewellyn, but free of you too, and I would like to take this farewell opportunity to say that I'm enjoying it immensely. Aha, I thought so. You were very silly, Elvira, to imagine that I didn't know all about you and Captain Bracegirdle. I did. But what you didn't know was that I was extremely attached to Paula Westlake at the time. I was reasonably faithful to you, Ruth, but I doubt if it would have lasted much longer. You were becoming increasingly domineering, you know, and there's nothing more off-putting than that, is there? Goodbye for the moment, my dears. I expect we are bound to meet again one day, but until we do, I'm going to enjoy myself as I've never enjoyed myself before. You could break up the house as much as you like. I'm leaving it anyhow. Think kindly of me and send out good thoughts. Nice work, Ruth. Get Elvira to help you. Persevere. Goodbye again. Parting is such sweet sorrow.
I'll be loving you always with a love that's true. Always when the things you've planned need a helping hand, I will understand. Always, days may not be fair.
Someone thank everybody for coming. This is Rose, and we have had such a good time here. You guys are a great audience, and generous tips are always appreciated. Thanks so much for inviting us to play here at Inspiration Island, and I hope you folks enjoyed the show as much as we enjoyed doing it.
Not for just a day, not for just a year, but always. may not be fair or